ERP software systems can turn into a money pit if you don't manage them right. But what are those hidden costs that'll sneak up on you and grab you if you don't pay attention? That's what I want to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach the third stage of digital transformation success. And one of the key services we provide our clients is project planning. So we'll help them choose software, but then we'll also help them evaluate and plan for the implementation, including setting a budget, a realistic budget for what the project's going to cost. And what we also find is when projects fail, there's a bunch of hidden costs that just sort of sneak up and grab a project team and create problems along the way. And those hidden costs are things that you should be able to anticipate if you plan for them, and that's exactly what I want to talk about here today. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. The first hidden cost that organizations oftentimes fail to account for when they're developing their total cost of ownership is internal resources. When you look at your internal resources that are required for a project, they're pretty substantial. You need a lot of full-time people in many cases to support the project, or at the very least, you need a lot of part-time people, not only on your core project team, but also with your extended subject matter experts. These are the people that will help define what the future state processes are going to look like. These are the people that will help ensure that the system integrator is configuring the software to meet the requirements. They'll be involved with testing and training and change management. All kinds of stuff requires internal resources to ensure that the project is successful. Now, the bad news is most organizations are very lean. They don't have a lot of people just sitting around waiting for a project like this to come along. They've already got their day jobs, and in many cases, they have highly inefficient day jobs, which is why they're going through this ERP project in the first place. So it's a very tricky balancing act that organizations go through, and not enough organizations really think this through and mobilize their internal team when they start a project. Oftentimes what happens is you get the outside resources that come in, and the internal team's not ready. They haven't even defined who the internal people are, nor have they figured out how to backfill the resources that they're allocating to the project. So if we assume that resources are not infinite and that we have limited people and limited budget, we've got to figure out how are we going to backfill those people that are focused on the project so that they aren't pulled away from the project to do their day-to-day jobs in a way that undermines the project. So when you're going through this process, you want to make sure in phase zero, in that implementation planning of phase zero, to spend a lot of time figuring out what that internal team looks like, because you could argue the internal team is more important than the outside consultants you bring in, and that internal team has a cost and a price tag associated with it. And if you don't budget for those internal resources, then you're going to pay for it in other ways. You're going to pay for it via timeline delays that will cause the budget to increase over time because your internal people aren't engaged enough to make decisions. So either way, you're going to pay for internal resources. You want to make sure you have a strategy and you're very deliberate about how you pay for that. One of the biggest justifications for new ERP software is that you can get rid of that old system that's costing you too much time, money, and headache. It might be an old homegrown system. It might be an old legacy system that a software vendor provided that's no longer being supported. It could be a proprietary system that only a couple people in the world know how to program. But whatever it is, there's a cost associated with running those old systems. So oftentimes when organizations build a business case for their ERP investments, they assume that those old systems are going to go away, and that makes total sense. You want those old systems to go away eventually. But what we often find is that it doesn't go away as quickly as organizations think, nor does it go away as quickly as they assume in their business case. So we want to make sure that we are realistic about what those costs are and how long we're going to have to maintain and preserve those systems. It could be because we need to make sure that the new system is stable before we shut off and decommission those old systems. It could be because we are doing a multi-phase rollout of the new system and we can't get rid of that old system until we get to the appropriate phase of the project. Or it could be that those old systems have data in it that we need to preserve, and we don't necessarily want to bring all that data to the new system. So whatever the case is, we just want to be realistic about what those costs are and when the costs will actually go away. So if we're going to continue with those legacy systems, we need to make sure we account for that and budget for it in our total cost of ownership estimate. Now, what I would argue is probably the biggest hidden cost of ERP software is the unrealized business benefits that you never achieve. So in other words, you assume that you could be saving a certain amount of money because you're more efficient with new technology, or you're going to drive new revenue because of new technology. And those are probably viable expectations around business benefits, but too often organizations rush through the project and they mismanage it so much that they never realize those business benefits. And when you look at the business benefits that are lost or just left on the table or left off on the side and never fully materialized, those costs, those lost costs and benefits are typically much larger, exponentially larger than the initial cost and investment in the technology itself. So if you're really going to pick one thing to really make sure that you don't run into this issue of hidden costs and unexpected hidden costs, you'll make sure you realize the business benefits you expect to get out of it. And even though business benefits aren't technically a cost, there is a cost associated with the opportunity cost of not realizing those benefits. So that's the way we need to think about it. So making sure you have a solid benefits realization plan is a way to overcome this hidden cost of unrealized business benefits. One of the biggest line items that are most likely to go over budget is the system integrator costs, the technical implementer, that software vendor, service provider that's coming in to design, configure, and build the new software. And the reason for this is oftentimes these system integrators have this sense of an open checkbook. They feel like they gave you an estimate, but it's only an estimate, and they're going to take as long as it takes to get the project done right. And it could be that they had unrealistic expectations at the beginning. It could be that they're mismanaging their own resources. It could be that the resources are unqualified and therefore it's costing more to get the job done right. There's a whole plethora of reasons why it could be, but there are commonalities in a lot of projects where the system integrator, the technical implementer, spends way more time and money on their services than what was originally expected. And that oftentimes is what causes these projects to spiral out of control and causes these budgets to inflate to the point where it's hard to justify the ROI. So if there's one thing I could suggest here, it's really two things. One is to make sure you have realistic expectations for what your system integrator is going to cost. But secondly, and more importantly, make sure you're managing the system integrator, you're managing those resources, and that you're accountable and your team is accountable for managing that line item in your budget to ensure that the system integrator doesn't run away with that budgetary line item. I mentioned earlier how unrealized business benefits can be the biggest hidden cost in a digital transformation or ERP project. The other one that I'd say is either a close second, or you can make a strong argument for being the biggest hidden cost, is operational disruption. So in other words, when you go live, what happens to your business? Most organizations assume you're going to get business value and business benefits, but what more often happens in the short term is that there's some disruption, there's some turmoil, there's some chaos that ensues. Now, obviously, you want to minimize this chaos. You don't want there to be any more chaos than you need, but the reality is there's a learning curve. It takes people some time to get used to the system, and if you don't have the right governance controls and oversight in place, it's quite likely that you go live and you can't ship product. You can't close the books. You can't run payroll. It's a major material operational disruption that can cost you a ton of money. That's why when you look at the cost benefit of extending the project for a little bit longer or adding to the budget, or better yet, budgeting accurately from the start, you want to make sure that, yes, you might be increasing time and budget on the implementation, but you're also mitigating risk of operational disruption downstream. Now, obviously, there's a point at diminishing returns where you could spend years and millions of dollars implementing and still never mitigate all your risk. So you don't want to overdo it, but you also want to make sure that there's a minimum level of risk that you've overcome and mitigated so that you know and you feel confident that when you flip the switch and go live on new technologies, you're not going to disrupt the business and create those unnecessary costs for your organization. So the key here is to optimize your investment in ERP software. There's always going to be hidden costs, and the key here in this video is to share with you what those hidden costs are so that you can be aware of them, open up your eyes, and go in with a clear understanding of what the project is really going to cost, so that when you go to your team and ask for budgetary approval from your higher-ups, you know that you can confidently say this is what it's going to cost, and you've accounted for some of these risks that we talk about here today. So if you'd like to learn more best practices on how to make your digital transformation or ERP project successful, I encourage you to read our book called Lessons from 1,000 ERP Implementations. It contains 20 lessons that we've learned and 20 patterns that we see in successful ERP implementations versus those that are not successful. We cover things around budgeting, but we also cover things that are outside the realm of budgeting. So be sure to check that out. You can scan the QR code below or go to the links below as well. So if you found this information useful, and I hope you have a great day. Or in some cases, if the costs are going to stay. So hope you're having a great day. Or in some cases, if those, now I can't remember the rest of it.